Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku had the strength of the Hulk Part 2. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see Part 3, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story 𝗧𝗵𝗲 from fanfiction. So let's start the video. All Might came in hot, ready for another battle with Hulk. 𝗧𝗍 leaped off his shoulder and rolled as he hit the ground. "I am ready for round 2, he bellowed. He saw the girl that the Hulk had grabbed. In her lap, a boy rested asleep with a blanket over him. All Might was stunned, and then the boy twitched. A growl erupted from the boy. "Get back," he yelled. Midnight glared at the hero. 𝗧𝗍 dove away as she activated her quirk, flooding the area with her sleeping gas. All Might wobbled and fell face first to the ground. When the gas cleared, Namuri was sitting with Izuku's head in his lap, lightly stroking his hair. "Why do birds suddenly appear every time you are near? Are they like me? Do they long to be close to you?" "Do-ba-do," she sang wistfully. 𝗧𝗍 looked over at the staff, notably Recovery Girl. She had been reluctant to allow anyone close to the boy, she said, motioning behind her to a few sleeping students and faculty members. "Ms. Kayama," 𝗧𝗍 said, approaching the girl with the sleeping Izuku on her lap. "Yes, Principal 𝗧𝗍," she responded innocently. "We need to move the boy inside the medical wing," 𝗧𝗍 said calmly. When the military and police arrived, he noticed her glaring at him. "You know they will. It would be best if he were somewhere he felt safe and all the commotion didn't startle him into another transformation like today. You can sit with him to keep him safe. I am sure his parents will be most appreciative when they arrive." "You are probably right," Namuri said, lifting Izuku. The boy shifted and wrapped his arms and legs around her like a spider monkey, his head resting on her shoulder. Namuri looked so happy, carrying him to the medical wing. Once they were gone, 𝗧𝗍 reached into his vest, pulled out some smelling salts, and waved them under All Might's nose. The #1 hero pushed up off the ground, ready to fight. He was confused when he was alone with 𝗧𝗍 and Recovery Girl. "May I borrow your cane?" 𝗧𝗍 asked Recovery Girl, the woman who handed it to him. He gave a test swing, adjusted his grip, leaped into the air, and hit All Might on the top of his head, eliciting a yelp of pain. "That is very satisfying. I see why you carry a cane," 𝗧𝗍 said, handing it back to Recovery Girl. "I think I may need to start carrying one." "See, now you understand." She pulled All Might down and kissed his forehead before she walked back to the school. "Oh, 𝗧𝗍, what was that for? Where is that green behemoth?" All Might said, rubbing his head. "I told you I needed you to come in and do as I say, not to start attacking the first thing you saw," 𝗧𝗍 said. It escalated an already tense situation that didn't need further escalating. The unfortunate arrival of Justice Rider had seen to that. That green behemoth was doing battle with those soldiers. "I had to interfere," All Might protested. "Did you not notice green laser weapons?" 𝗧𝗍 rubbed his nose. "The green behemoth, as you put it, was the situation we were there to defuse. That boy you saw sleeping on the lap of one of my students was the IT. He reacts that way due to fear, and we are not sure why it is that way. We were made aware that this was an attempt to cause the boy to rampage in the middle of Tokyo to enforce his servitude to the HSPC. I asked you there in case it escalated out of control, not to escalate the situation further. Did you not find it odd that 2 military units were outfitted with experimental weaponry on the scene at that moment?" "That was a bit odd," All Might said, rubbing his chin. "That green Hulk," 𝗧𝗍 said. "The Hulk is a manifestation of that child's quirk?" All Might said slowly. "And the HSPC was looking to trigger that transformation in the city, so they were aware of it and triggered ahead of time? I have always suspected that the HSPC was not completely above board, but what does the military have to do with this?" "It is believed that the boy's quirk accumulates gamma radiation," 𝗧𝗍 said as they started to walk towards the school. "The child was caught up in an explosion where a massive amount of gamma radiation was released, triggering what is thought to be a mutation. The interesting part—" "Wait, that isn't the interesting part," All Might said. "The boy does not appear to be in control when the change happens." 𝗧𝗍 swiped his access card as they entered a private hallway. "The Hulk is animalistic. It fought a high-level criminal, members of the JDF, including an Alpha-class lightning quirk. Before it fled, The boy was found over a month later wandering the woods. When confronted by a hostile force, he again transformed, and that was when he was captured on the news. "I thought I recognized him," All Might said, snapping his fingers. "How many large green hulks do you deal with on a normal basis?" 𝗍𝗂 said, perplexed. "I don't, so I only read the news article." All Might laughed. "We were attempting to contain the situation when you came in and decided to punch first," 𝗍𝗂 said. All Might stopped laughing. "Toshi, there is something else," 𝗍𝗂 said. The emotion of the conversation changed. "I talked to an old friend," 𝗍𝗂 continued. "When the military base was attacked, there were strange homunculi present at the attack. There was also a large man with white hair over 7 feet tall, red eyes floating above the scene in command of the attack." All Might froze. His smile faded, and his entire demeanor shifted. That boy destroyed all his minions, engaged him in direct combat, and forced him to retreat. "Are you sure?" All Might said. "Yes, I believe my source. They said that the man grabbed the Hulk, and nothing happened except that he got ragdolled by the Hulk before retreating when the military showed up." 𝗍𝗂's cheek twitched slightly. "That same boy who just fought you and got the better of the exchange. That boy has come out victorious against you, All Might, and one for all. Namiri." She was directed to a private room with her precious cargo. When she went to set Izuku in the bed, his grip tightened. "It's okay. We are both safe now," she whispered. "You saved me, and now it is my turn to protect you. Can I protect you now?" She felt a deep rumble from within the boy as his grip eased and released. She tucked the blanket under his chin before she exited the room to receive more treatment from Recovery Girl. She had consented to a kiss on the forehead for the initial wound, but now she was ready for a complete examination. She had just finished when Eraserhead, Loud Cloud, Shota, and Oboro came running in. "Howdy, boys," she said with a wink as she adjusted her stockings. "Miss me? I am going to murder you," Shota yelled. "Nemi," Oboro said. "I am glad you are safe, but what were you thinking?" "Besides following orders," she said, slipping on her shoes. "We were supposed to try and keep the kid safe. What if that thing decided to tear you apart?" Shota said. "It was trying to protect me and others," Namiri replied. "It could have torn those soldiers to pieces, but it didn't. Remember what 𝗍𝗂 said about how that boy liked heroes? When we couldn't slow him down, I didn't want him fighting with All Might, and I didn't know if my gas would work, so I thought getting him away from the civilians would be best." "It was a right idea," Shota said. "That didn't mean you didn't scare the shit out of us." "Yeah, Nemi," Oboro added. "We were scared something happened. Where are you going?" "Back to the kid," Namiri said. "I promised I would protect him. You can come. Oh, and tell Hisashi if he comes and wakes him up, I will break him in half." Once she was gone, "She seems caught up with this kid," Shota said. "I have never seen her like this," Oboro added. "Hopefully it doesn't lead to problems." "Weren't you supposed to begin your internship today?" Shota asked. "Yeah, but when 𝗍𝗂 calls," Oboro shrugged. "Problems." 𝗍𝗂 was right. It wasn't long before the military and police, along with members of the HSPC, descended upon Yui. The first to arrive as expected was the HSPC, Chief of Security Ōjino Masa, who stepped off the helicopter. Ōjino was a man with a broad stature and hardened features. The man had an aura of not dealing with nonsense or having the world's lowest tolerance for it, so when he stepped off the helicopter, flanked by a 4-person team of the HSPC, including Momentum and Morph, the other two were twins, women with black hair pulled in a tight braid, their eyes hidden behind sunglasses, matching black suits with metallic gloves. "We are here to retrieve Izuku Midoriya," Masa said. "He is under the care of the HSPC, and with the incident, we need to get him back into containment as quickly as possible." "Well, that sounds very serious," 𝗍𝗂 said, seated on the shoulder of his combat instructor, the pro hero mime. "I am afraid that I must decline till the boy's parents come and authorize me to release him." "We are asking as a courtesy," Masa replied. "And I am telling you," 𝗍𝗂 said, his smile fading. "I will not release the boy to anyone but his parents or a court-appointed guardian. Now, Mr. Masa, if you wish for this situation to escalate further, I am sure that you will find the faculty of the UA more than willing to accommodate you. Or you can have the parents come here and tell me to release them to you." 𝗍𝗂 paused, tapping his cheek. But I find it odd that the boy was on an excursion without a parent present, and that the vehicle that struck the transport appeared uncrewed. I have one of my top investigators on the scene. Mizu smiled. Where is the child? Masa asked as more members of the UA staff made themselves visible, along with All Might, who walked out to eat a sandwich. Resting, Mizu said, looking as another chopper came into view. This one the JDF, and it wasn't alone as an APC was also entering the area. Oh dear, it seems to be getting crowded, Mizu sighed. I expect the police will be here soon. Thunderbolt stepped off his chopper, flanked by his assistant, as members of the JDF began to disembark. Mizu noted that the strange weapons they carried were the same ones that had responded to the incident. It was quickly getting crowded on the field, and tensions were increasing. We are here for the boy, Thunderbolt ordered as he walked up. He is a possible danger and needs to be safeguarded not only for his safety but also for the nation's safety. I don't think so, General, Masa replied. The HSPC will be taking the boy back to our facility. You failed to contain the threat once. What makes you think you won't fail to do so again? Thunderbolt glared at Mizu. It was fortunate that you happened to be in the area, along with you, All Might. I was passing through, All Might said as he came to stand with Mizu. I am afraid that I must agree with Mizu that parents must be consulted in this important matter, as things must be addressed. Standing out here glaring at each other isn't going to do anything. How about we go inside and wait for them to arrive? Thunderbolt gnawed on his cigar before reluctantly agreeing, as did Masa. They left orders and followed Mizu into the school to a waiting boardroom. That thing is a dangerous animal, Thunderbolt said once inside. On that, we can agree, Masa replied. But we believe the boy can harness and learn to use the beast for good. We, the HSPC, are already committed to helping him achieve his maximum potential. By letting him run rampant in the streets, Thunderbolt countered. It is fortunate that there was no loss of life today. That is an interesting point, Mizu said as some refreshments and food were brought in. From what I observed, the beast, or Hulk as I call him, seemed very concerned with public safety. He used his body to shield the innocents when the van exploded, extradited that child, and protected a student when your military detonated some rather interesting explosive devices. He also assaulted those soldiers. He is lucky they are only in the hospital, Thunderbolt said. Lucky? Mizu raised an eyebrow. It seems that the Hulk was more than capable of killing those soldiers, but instead, the fact that they are in the hospital and not the more is an interesting fact. Yes, the Hulk is quite a powerful foe, All Might said, but he seems to react to outside factors, such as when the soldiers attacked, or I did myself. When one of the poor students caught up in this infraction asked to be saved, the Hulk did just that. If you say so, Thunderbolt said. Izuku. His eyes opened. He sat up quickly looking around. He started to panic until he saw a girl sitting by his bedside. At the foot of his bed were two boys all dressed in the most famous school uniforms ever. The sleepy guy seemed a bit scary. The other just smiled, but the girl who smiled sweetly at him made him feel at ease. His lower lip trembled. I didn't kill anyone, did I? He said to her. No, nothing of the sort, Izuku, the girl said, sitting beside him on the bed. There were some injuries, she said soothingly. She slipped her arm around her shoulder. But it could have been a lot worse. You should know that the Hulk tried to protect people. He even helped keep me safe. Hulk? Is that his name? Izuku said, trying to calm down. He tried to be a hero? I wouldn't, the tired boy with black hair began to say before the other one elbowed him. I mean, he seems to have a strong protective instinct. That is good. Very good, the boy added with a nice smile. It could have been much worse, but the Hulk seemed to be responding to threats and not seeking them out. Kind of like playing defense. That is good, Izuku looked up to the girl. You smell nice. I don't know, but it makes me feel safe. Thank you, Izuku, she said. You can call me Nemi. That tired one is Aizawa, and the other is Oboro. Do you know where you are? UA, he said hesitantly, but her smile told him he was right. I want to come here one day if I can figure out a way to control my transformation. I think that the transformation is just a part of you, Namiri said. You don't want to hurt people. You want to keep people safe, and the Hulk did that. She smiled. It may take time, but I would try to figure out how not to control the transformation but make it part of you. Like two halves making it whole. Am I in trouble? Izuku said hesitantly. There is trouble, Izuku said. But you are not in trouble, Izuku. Some things need to be sorted out. Mizu the principal will handle it. Yeah, kid, the principal has it in hand, Oboro said enthusiastically. Are you hungry? Before Izuku could respond, his stomach did it for him, making everyone laugh. Yui sat mesmerized by the screen as images of a great big green beast were plastered everywhere. The footage of his battle had the girl mesmerized. Every time the beast roared, she would smile in the end. When it called out in triumph, the girl did the same. She began to leap around the room, roaring at her dolls and tossing them around, mimicking what she had just seen. The conference room. There were periods of silence as Masa and Thunderbolt made their cases for jurisdiction over the boy, arguing over who was better equipped to contain him. Mizu let them argue as he was recording the conversation, and would use that to his benefit once the parents arrived. When Izuku was informed that they were at the gates, he immediately ordered them to be admitted and brought to the conference room. It wasn't long until they came in, the boy's mother looking frantic. "Where is my son?" she demanded. "He is currently with the students he encountered this afternoon," Mizu said promptly. He hit some keys on a keyboard, and an image appeared floating in the middle of the room. Izuku sat with the 3 students beside the female one as he happily ate a hamburger. "I wouldn't recommend having him brought here at the moment," Mizu added, looking around the room. "But if you like Mrs. Midoriya, I can take you to him. But it would be best if you calm down first. Also, these gentlemen have been discussing your son's future and who has the right to house him." Inko's worry shifted to anger as she glared at Masa and Thunderbolt. "What is it that you want?" Hisashi said. The same, Mizu said smiling, but for very different reasons than them. "It would be best if you let them speak, and I will give you my sales pitch. I know you are worried, but I promise you he is safe, unharmed, and in good hands. Where is Kana?" Inko said, staring at Masa. "Lady Nagant has pulled away on an important mission," Masa said. "It was unavoidable." Inko looked at him dubiously. "General, why are you here?" Hisashi said. "As you are aware, I first encountered the Hulk after the attack on the facility," Thunderbolt said. "No one was aware at the time that it was your son. It escaped after attempting to subdue what we believed to be a hostile entity. When he re-emerged, I sent Talbot to retrieve him in the name of national security." "You sent that bastard," Inko said. "He assaulted my son and little Reiko as well. He just made everything worse." Thunderbolt gnawed on his cigar momentarily. "I believe he has been properly punished for his lack of judgment. But today, your son ran rampant again, attacking civilians, pro-heroes, and military personnel. He is dangerous and needs to be contained in a secure facility where he can be properly trained and the general populace can be kept safe." "About that general," Hisashi said. "I noticed the rapid response of that military personnel with rather advanced weaponry that I would guess was gamma-powered." Hisashi looked at Mizu. "You were also very quick to arrive on the scene. Your research was done under the JDF," Thunderbolt said. "What that research is used for is not your concern. And the troops were lucky to be in the area in an attempt to stem the rampage of your son, Dr. Midoriya. You are lucky that charges were pressed against him as soon as it was realized that the Hulk and he are the same person." Inko looked about, ready to attack the Thunderbolt. If looks could kill, he would have been struck dead. "Listen, the boy will return to the facility in Tokyo under the protection of HSPC," Masa said. "Obviously, him being allowed out of the facility was a mistake, and maybe after a few years, that matter could be readdressed." "A few years?" Inko said, stunned. "Hisashi, they are trying to lock him up. He will never get to have a life like this. I want Kana here." Hisashi put his arm around his wife. "What is your explanation?" he said to Mizu. We were tipped off that your son was going to be taken out of the HSPC facility while you and your wife were away, as well as Lady Nagant," he said with a chipper tone. "Of course, each party believed the other one would be present. They never discussed your son leaving the facility, did they?" The Midoriyas shook their head. "You see, someone else tipped off the general here, which is why he was there. His new weapons were there to try and take your son down as he had failed to do so, and conventional weaponry seemed to have little to no effect." Mizu took a sip of his tea. "I wanted to be there to connect with the Hulk and prevent anyone from being killed. I believe that was the hope of the HSPC in this escapade. They planned on triggering his transformation and hoped that something terrible would happen, and then they would be the only ones you could turn to for his protection. You see, they are looking to control your son. What is that you want? 𝗵𝗏 asked. I want to give him control, Mizu smirked. Let me propose this. Give me 2 weeks, and I will tell you about this transformation from boy to Hulk. The 𝗧𝗵𝗃 may send a representative to monitor everything we do and the JDF, so everyone can monitor the situation. Mizu paused, looking at the Midoriyas. They are not wrong. It can be perilous if your son doesn't learn to control this. Holding him in isolation is a terrible idea. He is a child, and children need to be exposed to new things so they know how to handle them. I believe I can identify this transformation, but we here at UA are uniquely situated to teach him that control he desperately needs. Are you going to keep him in a cage? 𝗵𝗏 said. Never, madam, Mizu said. I know what that is like. No one should be kept in a cage. We have housing that you and your son can move into. He can go outside to play. Give me 2 weeks if you don't like my answers. There are other options. 2 weeks? 𝗵𝗏 looked at Hisashi. You have 2 weeks, Hisashi said. Unless it is 𝗧𝗵𝗲, then I don't care what happens. We will never return to the 𝗧𝗵𝗃. General, good day. We would like to see our son now. Please allow me to escort you, All Might said, breaking his silence and leading them out the door. Once the door closed, 𝗲𝗲 glared at Mizu. What are you playing at? The 𝗧𝗵𝗃 wishes to have all of not only Hero Society, but all of Japan in its pocket, Mizu said. Overwatch is trying to rule everything. Do not think for 1 second that your erasures have not gone unnoticed. Thunderbolt is afraid of this, but he doesn't know that 𝗧𝗵𝗃 is the actual enemy and believes that heroes will take over the country like what was attempted in South America and that it is only a matter of time before wars break out. He is developing weapons for that very reason. What he should be worried about is the villains and those homunculi that attacked the base, Mizu continued. Thunderbolt raised an eyebrow. You both see Izuku Midoriya as another weapon that can add it to your arsenal. And you don't, Thunderbolt sneered. If that arsenal is a great future pro-hero, Mizu said. If you both keep provoking this Hulk, things will not end well. The boy needs to learn control. Not to live in a cage and only be released when you want the Hulk to react and destroy things. I will expect Lady Nagant to arrive post-haste. General, send whom you will, but till then leave. Take your troops and get out of my school. Do you want to go to war with the 𝗧𝗵𝗃? 𝗲𝗲 said. For the safety of Japan, I would go to war with 𝗧𝗵𝗃 and the JDF, Mizu said. Good day, gentlemen. Mizu left. Thunderbolt and 𝗲𝗲 eyed each other. It appears there is a rooster in both of our hen houses, Thunderbolt said. It appears so, 𝗲𝗲 said, walking out. Damn rat. Thunderbolt muttered as he left. 2 weeks. When 𝗵𝗏 and Hisashi got to the cafeteria, they saw Izuku look up and try to smile as the young lady beside him was wiping his mouth. Once free, he ran over to them and relished their group hug. 𝗵𝗏, holding Izuku, bowed and thanked the students for helping to keep her son safe. Hisashi got all their names, shook their hands, and thanked them again. It was Namuri who asked hesitantly if they were leaving. When he told them that she would be staying for at least a few weeks, she visibly brightened and asked if she could visit Izuku. He looked at his son, who seemed to be radiating hope. It reminded Hisashi of how he was with Kana. This girl had become one of his heroes. Of course, they couldn't say no, and the two looked like they had just won the lottery. 𝗵𝗏 had Izuku call Reiko, who had been calling as soon as the news broke. Hearing the two talking to each other, Reiko asking if she needed to hurt anyone was cute. Izuku was over the moon when Reiko told him that she and her mother were coming to see them. 𝗵𝗏 had talked to Emiko, and the woman had told her that they would come to see them after the incident so the children could be together, and she could be there to answer any legal questions. Kana was there the next day. She would have been in an absolute panic if she hadn't had a chance to talk with 𝗵𝗏. Upon her return, she demanded the assignment and was furious about the incident. She could smell Overwatch's hands all over this. She would have handed in her resignation right then and there, but she wanted to make sure her little brother was safe for the next 2 weeks. She dreaded the conversation she would have with 𝗵𝗏 and Hisashi, but she couldn't let them return to the 𝗧𝗵𝗃. Her heart swelled when Izuku ran into her arms, crying, lamenting the loss of his custom Nagant hoodie. There was this twinge of jealousy when Namuri came around, and Izuku shared how she was one of his favorite heroes. "She hasn't even graduated," 𝐭𝐚𝐲 muttered. She was surprised that that girl noticed how the Hulk protected people, including her, and that she had engineered his arrival and sedation. Her quirk could subdue the Hulk, which was interesting to learn. 𝐭𝐚𝐲 wondered if the Hulk was reacting to Izuku's love of heroes in protecting people. General 𝗧𝗵𝗃 sent his aid to Takumi. Her love of children would allow her to be softer to the boy, but her mind was sharp and could provide a detailed report he trusted. 𝐭𝐚𝐲 and Nomiuri loved watching him play with Reiko when she showed up and seeing his joy in being allowed to be a kid. Izuku didn't mind the tests. His dad, 𝐭𝐚𝐲, and sometimes Nomiuri were right there. Oboro Aizawa and a funny guy named Hisashi sometimes came by to check on him. He liked riding around on the cloud, but after a scolding from Nomiuri, 𝐭𝐚𝐲, and his mother, they had to keep it close to the ground. Izuku missed the other kids he played with, but being outside and running around the UA was such a new experience that he didn't mind it so much. The 2 weeks passed quickly, and Mizu called a meeting with the Midoriyas, 𝐭𝐚𝐲, and Takumi to reveal his findings. Nomiuri and her friends entertained Izuku on the athletic field outside the window. "Well, what have you found out?" Hisashi said. Mizu dimmed the lights, and projections and images filled the room. "It has been believed that your son Izuku Midoriya has a collection quirk. This quirk allows your son to absorb gamma radiation from the test we performed and that you have performed. This process would have taken a long time to come close to the levels it is at now, but once it had reached a certain level, I believe that your son would have then begun to mutate into a version of the Hulk. Not one rampaging and out of control, but one where they are one being. Your son's quirk is a mutation." Mizu paused. His body was to accumulate this energy, which would then naturally trigger his mutation to evolve to this state. But the sudden and violent exposure that occurred during the explosion accelerated and destroyed this process. To save him, his body just absorbed and absorbed. The Hulk is your son, and your son is the Hulk. They didn't have a chance to merge, so to speak, so that is why the Hulk reacts to fear. It is protecting Izuku. Izuku sees the Hulk as something separate instead of himself. "What do you propose?" Hisashi said. "I believe that with some mental counseling, if we can get Izuku to accept the Hulk as part of himself instead of compartmentalizing it, they will merge," Mizu said. "Will he become a different person?" 𝐒𝐭 said, worried, looking at their son laughing and chasing the boys with a water gun. "No, he will be himself, but big, green, and strong," Mizu said. "He will be what he was meant to be, but much stronger than he should be now. He will be able to lead the life he chooses. He will have to endure the problem of living with a mutation such as his, and he will be mistaken for an adult." "Will this work?" 𝗵𝐭 said to Hisashi. "I think it is his best opportunity," Hisashi said. "Mizu, we will put our trust in you. Help our son." "Ms. Takumi, Ms. Tsutsumi, I have prepared files with all our findings and a detailed report on Izuku Midoriya and his quirk." Mizu smiled as they took the files and left. Kiana whispered, "I will be back after I drop this off and tender my resignation." She paused, looking out the window. "My little brother needs me. If I may suggest," Mizu said once they were alone, "I would contact your lawyer and threaten the HSPC with a lawsuit for recklessly endangering your son. They will settle, and that sum will help you build a custom home for your family. I can help point you in the proper direction regarding schools, clothes, and furniture. He will have to adjust to his strength, but your son will do quite well for himself. He has the heart of a hero, even with the Hulk trying to protect others." "Thank you," Mizu 𝗵𝐭 said. Rebirth. It took 6 months of constant therapy, the support of his parents, his big sister, Nomiuri, and her friends, and even the grumpy one, his biggest supporter, Reiko. She would encourage him, telling him that with her quirk and his strength, there would be no cookie jar safe from them. "Imagine the cookies," she would say, making him laugh. Mizu's advice worked, and the HSPC agreed to settle. After finding a suitable location, Hisashi and 𝗵𝐭 began to build their home. Kiana may have cried when they showed her what room would be hers. Watching Izuku go through all this inspired Nomiuri to become a therapist. Izuku's eyes were closed, and trees surrounded him. As he walked, he came into a clearing, and the Hulk was sitting in the middle of the meadow. Its hand was out as a fawn was eating out of its hand. The fawn looked up at Izuku and scampered away. The Hulk looked over its shoulder at him and snorted. "I am sorry I called you scary," Izuku said. The Hulk looked over its shoulder. I am sorry that I said All Might was the strongest hero. I am sorry that I ran away from you. You are the strongest and toughest hero, and you jump way farther than All Might, and your smile is nicer than his too. Hulk turned around and looked at him, smirking. I want us to work together. Will you help me be a hero? I need your help, Hulk. I can't do it without you. I want to keep people safe and help Kiana, Namiri, Oboro, Hisashi, and even Shota. Hulk stuck out his tongue at Shota's name. I want to be a hero with Reiko. You like Reiko. Don't you want to be a hero with her? Hulk reached towards Izuku but stopped. I am sorry I rejected you. I will never do it again, Izuku said, extending his hand. Hulk, Izuku together. Forever. Hulk said as their hands touched. Yes, Hulk forever, Izuku said. Izuku was lying down. His body began to shimmer. Kiana and Namiri were in the room with him, holding his hand. Inko was seated across from him while his therapist, Ms. Yukaina, sat behind her desk. They watched his body grow, and his skin color turned green. They thought this might happen, so they covered him with a large blanket. Unlike when Izuku had transformed into the Hulk before this time, they noticed that his hair was still the curly mop, and they saw the diamond-shaped freckles still on his face. His body expanded and grew, and the couch groaned under the weight. There was a bit of trepidation, wondering if it had worked or if the Hulk was about to start raging. This was why they had Kiana and Namiri holding his hand, and Namiri was ready to flood the room with her gas. Hisashi was behind the observation glass with Mizu and Takumi, and all the telemetry was relayed and recorded. They were keeping a close eye on his heart rate as the times when he had transformed had been triggered by fear. Once he saw Namiri get hurt during training after taking a cheap shot, and Izuku got so mad that he nearly transformed, confirming that anger was another trigger. Izuku's eyes opened, and he held Kana and Namiri's hands. They felt so small, and he saw them staring down at him. Did it work? He whispered. He lifted his head and saw big green feet sticking out of the blanket. Can you sit up? Kiana asked. They saw Izuku start to move and then blush. He lifted the blanket and blushed more. I lost my underwear, he whispered. That got a good laugh. How do you feel, honey? Inko said, walking over to him. Good, Izuku said almost cautiously. Weird. Weird how? Ms. Yukaina asked. My body feels weird, and so does my head, Izuku replied. It is me, but I can feel this in my tummy. I can't explain it. Is it scary? Namiri asked. No, just different, Izuku replied. Can I have some clothes now? Yes, baby, Inko said. The girls left the room, and Hisashi and Nizu came walking in. Nizu had secured some clothing in advance, taking measurements from when the Hulk had manifested. This version looked more human than ape-like. Izuku had an impressive physique, but there would be an adjustment period. Adjusting. Izuku broke many doors, cups, video game controllers, and other things as he adjusted to his strength. It was difficult for the young boy to learn to live in a house of papier-mâché, and he could not do what other children would do, like wrestle with his father or others or play sports. It was Kana and Namiri's love of playing soccer that helped him the most, as he, of course, wanted to play with them and Reiko when she would come by, so it was a never-ending exercise in kicking the ball and not destroying it or hurting others when he did. It took another 6 months of constant training in controlling his strength before he could leave the UA and attend a school with kids his age. Kana had left the HSPC. She filed her resignation alongside her report on the successful merger of Izuku and Hulk. Takumi had taken her report to Thunderbolt, who just snorted and tossed it aside after he read it. The boy wasn't a threat for now, but they would continue to monitor the situation. He had another matter to attend to, which Nizu had referred to with the HSPC. Thunderbolt had a higher opinion of the HSPC than he did of everyday heroes. He considered most of them clowns running around in Halloween costumes. They served a purpose, but he felt that purpose would have been better served by incorporating them into the police. At least the HSPC was some governing body, and the heroes under their umbrella seemed better trained and more aware of their place. In the time before quirks, the JDF had been under the yoke of other nations. After quirks began to manifest and the world plunged into chaos, they could throw off that oppression and take their position as the defenders of Japan. Through their hard work and dedication, the First Quirk War ended, the Second War erupted, and the JDF quelled the uprising and saved the nation. The JDF saw the potential in those with specific quirks and were drafted into service to protect the country, but during the Third Quirk War, those conscripted against their will rebelled, adding to the chaos. The third was a war of villains and those that would become the first sanctioned heroes, those that had become such a symbol that they couldn't just be shuffled back into the shadows, and society wouldn't let them fade away. The JDF lost power in those years, with responsibilities for protecting the nation falling to these costumed clowns. When money and fame are introduced, more and more would flock to this new profession. It grew, as did the laws and schools, to teach and educate these idiots. The rise of heroes had negatively impacted the police and JDF as the safety and protection of the nation fell to the heroes. The formation of the HSPC was met with cheers by those like 𝗲𝗏𝗺𝗺, who felt the heroes needed to be policed. The HSPC, of course, were biased, but they seemed to be a solid steadying hand that was required. 𝗲𝗏𝗺 would deal with them with more civility, but Mizu bothered him, saying that corruption had spread to the HSPC and that Overwatch was making a play to take things over. That was something that 𝗲𝗏𝗺 could not allow. If the people of Japan called for it, then he would abide by the people, even if it was a stupid decision, but that didn't mean it was a dumb decision. He needed to shift his attention. He would keep an eye on the Hulk, but if the HSPC were going to bring a fight, he would make sure that they could fight back. The HSPC was not pleased that they lost Izuku Midoriya, his father, and Nagant. Then they noticed that JDF was starting to dig into matters they had no business digging into, coupled with a rooster in the henhouse that had exposed their plans. The murmurs running through the rank and file were unwelcome and needed to be handled quickly to avoid more discord. They were going to have to groom the next one correctly. Fortunately, Overwatch was not one to rest on his laurels, and there was one already on the verge of being revealed to the public. Send in Hawks. First day of school. Izuku had been insistent that they all be there for the opening ceremony. He stood proudly with a massive smile as he posed for the traditional pictures with his parents, then with Kyan and Namiri, separate and together, then with Aizawa, Oboro, and Hisashi. After it was all said and done, he took his first steps into his new class. With the construction of their new home having been completed, the moving-in process done, and his big sister living with them as she began her hero work, it had been a lot of new beginnings. But for all the things that Izuku had been looking forward to, the home had been constructed with him in mind. Large doors, hallways, reinforced walls, and fixtures are all designed to allow him to live an everyday life. His mother looked like a doll sitting on the couch, size for Izuku, but she loved it even when he rested his massive head on her lap while they watched a show. Of course, there was some ordinary-sized furniture, but Izuku liked to cuddle with his family. Watching him try to hide behind Reiko while a scary movie came on was an image that no one would soon forget. It wasn't known if Izuku would grow more prominent, so things had been constructed in his room and areas with that in mind. The school he would be attending was specifically for mutants. It specialized in those with size and strength issues and had special classes to help with both, though not restricted to only mutants. As that would be discrimination, the school catered to that branch of quirks just as some catered to intelligence boosting or support item creation. Izuku was happy to see the extra-large hallways. The stares he received were due to his size more than anything, as he saw all kinds of mutations, so other than being extra-large, he was just another student. He wasn't the only one. He saw a girl during the ceremony and was happy to see her in his class. They had 2 enormous desks at the back of the room. She was a tall, fox-like girl, about a foot shorter than Izuku. She has blonde hair that reaches just to her shoulders, with a single strand hanging down the right side of her face. She has large blue eyes with bushy eyelashes and pointed ears. Her features include green fur and a white furry underbelly. Her name was 𝗲𝗄𝗏. Her voice was calm, as she was timid when she introduced herself to Izuku, at the encouragement of a girl with pink skin, light pink hair, black scalar eyes with yellow pupils, and 2 small horns peeking out of her curly hair. Izuku couldn't help but smile when 𝗲𝗄𝗏 introduced herself. She turned to look at the pink-skinned girl to get her approval, and 𝗲𝗄𝗏 received 2 thumbs up. You would have thought that she had won the lottery. She did this little wiggle dance in her seat as her tail swished from side to side. It is a pleasure to meet you. I am Izuku Midoriya, he replied. Mina Ashido, the pink-skinned girl said. That was how it began, with a pink-skinned alien-loving girl, a large fox girl, and a green-skinned behemoth. Mina quickly established herself as the ringleader. 𝐒𝐻𝐸𝐽 was too shy to go against her best friend or nearly anyone, and Izuku was in the habit of deferring to a girl who took charge for his whole life. With his mother, Reiko, Kana, and Namiri, Mina was unstoppable, with the two most prominent people in the school behind her. It's not that Mina was a criminal mastermind, a bully, or even mean, but no cookie jar would be safe from her ever again. Her friends had such large lunches that they always had an extra cookie to share with her. There was trouble when she got Izuku to buy tickets for Alien, the Monarch instead of Brave Rabbit and the Forest of Mystery. But when 𝗬𝗓𝗓 and Izuku had nightmares that night, they all received a tongue lashing, Mina getting it the worst from her parents, 𝗬𝗓𝗓's parents, Inko, Kana, and Namiri. She was sullen about the whole affair until Izuku introduced her to Reiko, someone with whom she could share her love of scary things. While Mina tends to focus on the sci-fi and Reiko the supernatural, they find common ground. It saved 𝗬𝗓𝗓 and Izuku from having to get pulled in as much. Izuku would watch some scary things, but he had limits. 𝗬𝗓𝗓 was out at even the slightest bit of horror. Even suspense was not her cup of tea. As they all got older, they began to venture outside their bubble. They had to deal with the trouble their mutations would cause. Izuku and 𝗬𝗓𝗓 were constantly mistaken for adults. Once 𝗬𝗓𝗓 began to go through puberty, she had to suffer the same problems with guys of an age who had no business talking to her and making rude and uncomfortable remarks. Thankfully for her, Mina was a firecracker and did not have any of that, and Izuku had been taught by his sisters that there was no way to talk to a girl, so he wouldn't let it stand. Izuku's stature was enough to make most turns and run, but a group decided they wanted to get handsy, and the growl from Izuku made them freeze. He only shoved them away but went flying. It made 𝗬𝗓𝗓 and Mina's heart skip a beat when he pushed them away after the growl and stood protectively before the girls. However, Izuku was taken to the police station when the men made false claims, and the officer wouldn't believe his or the girls' statements. Once his big sister, the pro-hero Lady Nagant, came down to the station, they were willing to listen and look at Izuku's identification, which stated he was a child with a mutation quirk. Nagant was unhappy with the officers, but after hearing the story, she took the kids out for ice cream sundaes. It wouldn't be the first dust-up with the law that Izuku would have. 𝗬𝗓𝗓 and Izuku even had some local pro-heroes detain them while playing in the park for suspicious behavior. It was Izuku's first experience with being discriminated for his mutation, but it wouldn't be his last. He and 𝗬𝗓𝗓 suffered the most due to their size, with adults automatically assuming they were adults and not children. Several phone calls were placed about suspicious people in the park when they were trying to play with other children. The non-mutant children were afraid when they came into a park about playing with them, but once they saw how much fun Mina was having, it would be the icebreaker that made it okay to play with them. That was not to say that parents didn't take their children away or, as mentioned before, call the police or local pro-heroes who would hassle them for suspicious behavior. It was always the same heroes that did it, a trio themed after different sports: the baseball hero, umpire, the soccer hero, striker, and the sumo hero 𝗬𝗓𝗓. 𝗬𝗓𝗓 had a grudge against Izuku when, during a stop, he intimidated 𝗬𝗓𝗓, Reiko, and Mina when Izuku stepped in between them. 𝗬𝗓𝗓 decided to shove Izuku, and Izuku did not move. Instead, a guttural growl rumbled past Izuku's lips, and the desire to push back roared in his mind. But Izuku took a deep breath and just stood his ground, telling the hero to be nice to his friends. The other heroes, once they understood what was happening because they talked to the children and looked at 𝗬𝗓𝗓 and Izuku's unique identification, would take some time to play with them before resuming their patrol. There was also the problem that most parks did not have things sized or capable of supporting people like Izuku, who weighed in at close to half a ton and stood just over 7 feet tall. 𝗬𝗓𝗓, after puberty, was now 6 foot 7 inches. So, places the two of them could run around and play outside of their particular school were few, far, and in between. There were some unique parks in the city where they could play, but getting there was difficult. They had to ride a particular bus or wait for a special train with a specific train car. He had to sit in the back of a truck when he went somewhere with his parents. He tried to keep a happy demeanor, but having to constantly explain his presence somewhere when they were trying to be children and having an everyday life angered him. He was thankful for his sister Nemi and how she always made time to talk to or spend time with him, but she was busy with school and her internships. The same goes for Oboro, Aizawa, and Hisashi. They make as much time for him as possible. His big sister Kana always came and checked on him when she came home from patrol, would make him sit with her and listen to his day, and tell him about the exciting parts of hers. In Izuku's opinion, having sisters was the best. They always made him feel special, not because he was big and green but because he was just him. They hammered him about his grades, training, behavior, style, and appearance. The boys were constantly training him on how to control his strength in a fight and be more than a wild brawler. Knowing how to control his strength and attacks would put him in control of the battle. Besides, it was great sparring practice for them against a bigger opponent. The video of Izuku walking across the room with all three of them trying to take his leg was reminiscent of those videos of a father doing that same thing with his children. Of course, Nemuri would tease him about his girlfriends, as he was always with Josie and Mina, and then Reiko would be around as much as she could, but they would always talk on the phone. Kiana was the one who bought him his first cell phone, which was the size of what ordinary people call a tablet. Izuku would blush and sputter, trying to declare they weren't his girlfriends, at least not in the manner they were implying. It didn't help that he traveled to Reiko's hometown to take her to a dance. He took Josie and Mina to her first dance, and the fact that he took them both simultaneously added to his sister's teasing. Or when they found all four asleep in a giant cuddle pile. But it wasn't just teasing, they made him train. Once Nemuri and the boys went pro, they ensured he was in the hero gyms working out, studying hard, and doing his best. It wasn't a question that he would be a hero. He wanted to be there by his sister's side. He had to join their agency legacy. He wanted to be with Lady Nagant, Miss Midnight, Loud Cloud, Eraserhead, and Present Mike. Hisashi was proud of the man his son was becoming. Mizu, interested in his research into gamma rays as an energy source, had set him up in a lab, allowing him to continue his research. There were times, though, that he and his wife were wistful about the times before the merge when Izuku was smaller, and some of the things that had been lost because of it. But their son was alive, happy, and had friends. This was the form he would have entered eventually. So they just concentrated on making memories or experiences they could all share, such as outdoor adventures and specialized trips. Izuku and puberty. Izuku grew up surrounded by women and girls. His best friends were all girls. He had a few guy friends but was naturally closer with Reiko, Mina, and Josie. He was the first pick for anything in athletics. He loved soccer and running and had no issue playing without his shirt. The girls in his class and school appreciated his phenomenal physique, even if his size scared them. He always did. His sisters made him work, and he was their gym buddy. He worked out with the guys as well. The problem with being a 7-foot-tall Hulk is that none of the telltale signs of him entering puberty existed. The only thing that could be pointed to was his voice. After the merger, it was still Izuku's voice, with a bit more gravitas. Then there was the pool party. The awkwardness of early teens in the throes of puberty, mixed with water, bathing suits, and newly discovered interests in the opposite or the same sex, was always a recipe for fun. Now Izuku had noticed that a particular part of his body had decided that it had reached the stage of his life to come alive, and it didn't seem to care when that happened. Watching a program with his sisters where the kissing had been icky before was now very interesting, a bit too interesting. When the wind blew up Mina's skirt, he saw her Marvin the Martian underwear, or Josie's stripped underwear. He was struggling with the fact that he remembered those facts. If he was doing something wrong, then there was the other problem. Due to his height, he got a bird's eye view down the tops of some shirts when he didn't mean to. Then, the way it felt when Reiko would sit on his shoulders, she had done it for years. But now, when she did it, it made him feel funny. Now, crushes are normal. There is nothing wrong with having a crush. A few girls had a crush on Izuku, and he may have taken them to a dance or would always step up to defend them if the situation called for it. Or have held up someone's father's car one-handed while sweating in the hot sun. But that was not the point. The point is that while the girls had started transitioning into women, the changes to their bodies made it apparent that those telltale signs were absent in Izuku, leaving some questions. He had often gone swimming with Reiko, Mina, and Josie. It wasn't a new experience, but it had been a while, and between then and now, he had started going through changes. So it was time for the awkward flirting to begin, and Izuku had to deal with his new friend, who was trying to stand up and get everyone's attention at nearly all times. He was so embarrassed and confused. It was a bit much for him. Thankfully, though, he had two very loving, attentive, endearing, cuddling, and protective sisters who noticed and told Hisashi, who got to sit down and have the world's most awkward conversation with this Goliath of a son. Then he got the talk from Oboro, Aizawa, and Hisashi, and his mother tried, and he drew the line at that one and fled. It was an awkward time dealing with these blossoming emotions that are complicated. Navigating the waters of puberty is never a fun time. In the first wet dream, Izuku wanted to die. He was so embarrassed trying to figure out the washing machine. It could have been a terrible thing, or the best thing was that those same loving, attentive, endearing, overly attached, and protective sisters were the ones to find him. He wanted to die, but they just walked him through getting the machine running, and it was their turn to talk with their little brother. It wasn't the same talk or them talking at him. He was nervous and scared. But they sat him down and let him talk, ask his questions, and express his concerns. Most of the other conversations had been about him being talked to instead of with. But his sisters always made him feel safe and secure. They were such a large part of his life that the awkwardness of the conversation quickly fell away as they did what they did best for him and be his heroes. They always made things better. They sat and talked with him till he felt better. Izuku, looking like a little kid, sat squirming in his seat, rubbing his hands together. "How do you know if you like someone?" he said, blushing. Kiana and Namiri took a deep breath. They had some ideas, but wondered if some other hussy had been making a move on their little brother while they were working. They knew letting him go to that amusement park with Oboro and Mike was a terrible idea. Girl talk. Josie, Mina, and Reiko sat around the table, looking at each other. "I want to say that I am attracted to Izuku, and I would like to pursue a romantic relationship with him," Reiko said after taking a deep breath. "I wanted to know if I was the only one." To their surprise, Josie spoke first. Josie was the shyest of the group, the shyest girl in school. Despite her imposing nature, the girl was defined as a gentle giant and did not like confrontation. "I like him because he always makes me feel safe, and I don't feel different around him," Josie said. "But I don't want to be a hero. I don't know what I want to do. I just want a quiet life." Mina smiled at her friend. "That is fine, Josie. There is nothing wrong with that." She looked at Reiko. "He always treats everyone nicely. He is the first to stand up if something is wrong or someone messes with us in public. Even if it gets him in trouble because they all think he is an adult. He has come so far from the ghost on the mountain," Reiko said after a moment. "Watching him, I fell for him." "Josie and Mina, you are very dear friends of mine, and I don't want this to ruin our friendship. So I thought it would be best to discuss this. I like Izuku, but I don't think I like him like that. I always want him in my life. Someone who understands the trouble mutants like us have to go through. Someone I can rely on and talk to when I am feeling blue," Josie said, her voice coming out strong. "Do you have dreams of kissing him?" Mina asked. Josie shook her head. "I just like being around him." Josie paused and thought about it. "If I think about it, is like when I am with you two. I just want to be around you. I don't think I like him like him." "Mina?" Reiko turned to the pink-skinned girl. "I like him, but I think it is only as a friend. If you can find something, your friend is a kind of hot, like when that growl comes out, or he is being protective," Mina said, tapping her chin. "Izuku is cute, but I think I am with Josie because I want to be his friend." Mina smiled. "So if you want him, he is all yours." Josie squeaked. "Does that mean they will hold hands and kiss?" Josie hid behind her hands. "I would like to do those things with him, yes," Reiko said, a far-off look on her face as she imagined those events. "Yeah, she has a crush on him," Mina teased. Reiko blushed. "I am unsure of how to proceed." "Well, we are going to the same school next year," Mina said. "I highly doubt some girl is going to lay eyes on him and fall for him instantly." "I wouldn't worry. Just let things go. We need to figure out how he feels." "It will be nice seeing him every day," Reiko mused. "Thank you both." First day of a new school. Yui Kota was a quiet girl. She always chose to speak only when necessary. She hadn't given much thought to entering a new school. She kept to herself mostly. She arrived on campus for her first day, looked at the board for her class assignment, and walked to her class. She was one of the first to come, and when she walked in, she noticed the two huge desks at the back of the class. She tilted her head, wondering who would be the ones to fill the seats. As more of the students filled in, she took notice as they would be her classmates for the upcoming year at least. The room was getting louder as the students filed in, only a few empty seats, including the 2 desks at the back. She had turned her attention to the outside world when the door opened, and the room went silent. She looked to the door, her eyes widened, and her heart thumped in her chest. It was him. He was different, but it was him, the green beast from news all those years ago. He looked different, but she knew that it was him. He was followed by a large girl with some animal mutation, but she was more concerned with the green behemoth that had never left her mind. Unconsciously, she had placed her hand over her heart, which was thumping so hard she thought it would burst out of her chest. She occasionally dreamed of meeting him, and ever since she saw the news broadcast, she had wanted to meet him. After she heard nothing about a pro hero that matched his description, she assumed he was gone, but something about it was always in the back of her mind. Now, here he was. She couldn't stop the smile that. Yui couldn't concentrate during the morning periods. He was at the back of the classroom. She kept looking over her shoulder to steal glances at him. During the roll call, she heard his name, Izuku Midoriya. She swooned. She honest-to-goodness swooned. Her vision faded, and she almost fell out of her chair. She returned to her senses and was at a loss. The room could have been on fire, and she would have just sat there trying to look at him. Her mind was replacing the news broadcast of the behemoth of this version, sitting in her class. When he was called on for an answer, his voice was deep and reverberated through, doing things to her body she didn't understand. She turned to look over her shoulder. She had to look at him again, and he looked straight at her. It happened again. She nearly fell out of her desk, squeaked, and turned around. She had to talk to him, had to be near him. If he touched her, she may self-immolate. If he took her into big, strong, muscled arms, the bell ringing for lunch snapped her back from the most inappropriate daydream for school. She looked and saw him pull out a massive bento box, and her heart sank. She hadn't brought a bento. She usually purchased her lunch. Now what? She thought. Fortune favors the bold. Nothing ever comes to you by sitting and waiting, young lady. Her grandfather's words rang in her ears. Yui steeled her heart, praying she wouldn't faint, but if she did, he would catch her and take her into his arms. No, she smacked her cheeks and walked to the back of the class, not even noticing the girls sitting around him. She stopped right at his desk. He turned and looked down at her. She felt herself falling into the deep green pools most people called eyes, and she placed her hand over her slightly heaving bosom. "My name is Yui Kota," she said. "Nice to meet you," Izuku replied. "Izuku Midoriya." "Yes, I heard your name on roll call," she said, her head tilting slightly as she stared at him. "If everything all right, Kota," Izuku said cautiously. "Yui, you can call me Yui or Kota. I mean, whatever you like as long as you talk to me," Yui said, her breathing increasing. You are the most beautiful and handsome man I have ever seen, and I would be honored if you please go out with me," Yui said, bowing her head and holding out her hand. "What? Hold on. Holy cow. What is going on?" Yui lifted her head. "You are mesmerizing, beautiful, handsome. As soon as I laid eyes on you, my heart rate accelerated and will not slow down. I almost passed out just from looking at you. I am head over heels in love with you and want to be your girlfriend. I would have also known that you brought your lunch, but how could I have known? I have to say when I look at you." "Me?" Izuku said, stunned. "Yes, you Izuku Midoriya, have bewitched me by simply walking into the room, and I knew I could not possibly get through the day without just telling you that there is only one of you, because when you were created, the creators knew that they had reached perfection." Yui stepped forward. "Will you be my boyfriend?" "We don't even know each other, Kota," Izuku said. "No one has ever said anything like that to me. Just hearing that makes me feel funny, but in a good way. I know this isn't the answer you wish for, but can we get to know each other first?" "Yes, if that means I get to talk to you and eat lunch with you, then yes," Yui said, her eyes sparkling as she stared at him. She deeply breathed. "Please tell me you have a phone?" "I do," Izuku said, reaching into his bag and pulling it out. "May I please have your number?" Yui said, pulling out her phone. "I normally don't talk this much. I like to text, but my mom always said you must tell people what you want with your voice." They exchanged contacts, and Yui looked like she might either float away, vomit, or pass out. Possibly a combination of all three as she stared at her phone. "Okay, thank you," she said dreamily as she left the room. What the fuck was that? Mina said once the door closed. Mina language, 𝐎𝐻𝐼 said. I could never be so bold. Excuse me for a moment, Reiko said as she bolted from the classroom. Reiko, what in the world just happened? Reiko thought. She raced down the aisle and saw Yui about to enter the lunchroom. Reiko ran up to her, hey Kota. Hearing her name, Yui was pulled from her floating cloud of happiness, and she turned around and looked at the unknown girl running towards her. Yui shrugged and kept walking. Reiko called again, but Yui stared at the lunch menu and didn't turn around. Reiko approached her. Yui. Kota, she said, standing beside her. Yui looked at her, confused, then went back to the menu. Yui smiled and walked forward. What can I get you, darling? The lady said. Yui held up 4 fingers. Reiko was stunned as the girl ordered her food. She did not say a word. She just nodded yes and no, paid, and walked past Reiko. Why are you ignoring me? Reiko said. Do I know you? Yui said, finally perplexed. No, Reiko said, surprised. Yui gave her a look that communicated, that is why. And she walked away towards the class. Kota, wait, Reiko said, chasing after her. I am sorry, but I cannot allow you to date Izuku. Yui stopped mid-stride and turned around with the most murderous death glare. Why? Yui said, her voice dripping with malice. He has already stolen my heart long before this day, Reiko said. I don't care, Yui responded as she turned and started walking. We have been friends for years now, Reiko said, chasing after her. I love him and was working to the proper moment to tell him. Not my problem, Yui said, still walking. You snooze, you lose. We have a special connection, Reiko said, her mind whirling. Then you should have said something, Yui said, stopping at the door. I don't care, I am going to date him, I am going to marry him, I am going to love him, and he will love me. If I must skip lunch to beat you up first, I will eat a cold hamburger and fries on break. Yui stepped into the classroom. Izuku, I have returned with my lunch. Can I sit with you and eat? I would very much like to begin getting to know you better. Sure, Kota, that is fine, Izuku said. These are my friends Mina and 𝗎𝗍𝗍. I don't know where Reiko went. Okay, Yui said. After a minute, Reiko came into the room stunned. Yui happily ate her hamburger, asking Izuku about his lunch, favorite foods, and whether he liked hamburgers. Oh, this is Reiko, Izuku said, introducing them. Hello, Yui said, then refocusing on Izuku. You okay? Mina whispered as Reiko sat in a haze. I told her of my feelings and years of friendship. Her response amounted to too bad, so sad, Reiko whispered back. I tried to forbid it, but then she threatened to beat me up if I didn't let her eat with him, I guess. I am not sure. I am not one for intimidation, but we can pull her aside after class, Mina said, glaring at Yui. But what happens if we do and she tells Izuku, and he gets mad, Reiko said. I thought I had more time. Well, that is not the case, Mina said as Yui happily ate and talked with Izuku. At the end of class, Yui was sad to learn that they lived in opposite directions, still ignoring the other girls. But she promised to text him. Are you guys okay? Izuku said. Especially you, Reiko. You have been out of it since lunch. I am just feeling unwell, Reiko said back. I am going to go home and rest. I will talk to you all later. I am going to make sure she gets home safe, Mina said. Come on, 𝗎𝗍𝗍. 𝗎𝗍𝗍 eeped and followed after waving to Izuku. Izuku. Izuku took a deep breath and began his trip home, his head in a slight fog for the entire trip. The last thing he expected was a love confession from someone he had never met. It felt nice knowing someone liked him, but now he felt confused. He did, after all, like someone. Maybe, but what if he was barking up the wrong tree? Yui was lovely. She had this sparkle when she looked at him, which made his stomach feel funny. He needed his sisters, but they were on patrol till later. He boarded the special train car and rode towards his home. When he got home, he was surprised to see his father's car in the driveway. He entered through his door and called out, I am home. He heard his mother laughing and giggling. Welcome home, honey, 𝐭𝐸𝐴 said. He heard her smack his dad's hands. Hisashi, Izuku is home. 𝗍𝗍𝗍. Izuku said as he slipped on his pink bunny slippers, a gift from his 𝗍𝗵𝗍, and walked into the kitchen to see his mother giggling, blushing, and slapping his father's hand away from her butt. Guys? Really? Izuku said. I have no idea what you are talking about, son, Hisashi said with a smile. How was the first day of school? Yes, honey. How was your first day of school with Reiko? Inko said, still smiling as she stirred a giant pot on the stove. It was nice, but she wasn't feeling good, so she went home, Izuku said. Some girl approached me at lunch and asked me to be her boyfriend. Good job there, stud, Hisashi said, smiling. Those Midoriya genes are working now, ow, he said as Inko smacked his arm. Don't listen to him, Inko said, rolling her eyes. The only reason your father and I ever started dating was because I had to paint him a picture and smack him with it about 100 times. Who was the girl? Never met her, Izuku said. Her name is Yui Kota. She has black hair and these pretty blue eyes, like a bright blue. She just walked up and told me how handsome and gorgeous I was, how when she first saw me, she fell in love and wanted to date me. What did you say? Inko pressed. It was nice to know that someone felt that way, but I told her I didn't know her and we needed to get to know each other better, Izuku said, sitting in his spot at the countertop. So some girl you never met just came up and asked you out? Hisashi said. Izuku nodded. Well, you gave a good answer. It would be best if you got to know her better. What did the girls say about it? Nothing, Izuku shrugged. They were quiet about it. I guess they didn't care. Did you want them to care? Inko asked. It would have been nice if they said something, I mean anything, Izuku said. It was nice hearing her gush about me, though. With me being... He motioned to himself. I always thought that unless I meet someone like me then, Izuku shrugged. Inko's shoulder bumped Hisashi. Son, why don't we go outside and toss the ball around so that we can talk and your mom can finish dinner, Hisashi said. Okay, Dad, Izuku said, his face brightening up. Hisashi and Izuku grabbed their gloves and stepped outside. Talk to me, son, Hisashi said as he threw Izuku the ball. Okay, so you can't tell Mom, Izuku said as he gently tossed the ball back. I promise, Hisashi said, the ball making an audible thwop as he caught it. So I think I have a crush on Reiko and one on 𝗬𝗧𝗍, but they are different, Izuku said. How so? Hisashi replied. 𝗬𝗧𝗍 and I are the same size. She is sweet and shy but understands things that others don't. I mean, Izuku said. Being another person with a mutation and size mutation, she understands the struggles it brings on a personal level, Hisashi finished. And Reiko? Childhood friend, Izuku replied. Always been there, since the very beginning. Just so important. And Hisashi pressed. I don't know. I don't think she feels that way, Izuku said. And she is my best friend. And is it because I haven't been around many people, and I am scared of being alone? Are you scared of being alone? Hisashi said, pausing before throwing the ball back. Some, Izuku said, sounding unsure. I have this dream where I see Nemi and Kiana get married, and they just disappear. Then Reiko, Mina, and 𝗬𝗧𝗍 go away, and I am left sitting at this table all by myself. And all the other people fade away. That is pretty intense, son, Hisashi said, surprised. How come you never said anything? I don't know, Dad, Izuku lamented. I didn't want to freak Mom out or you. Kiana and Nemi told me I was crazy that they would never leave me and would be with me forever. They weren't lying, Hisashi muttered. What? Izuku said. Nothing, Hisashi replied. I understand, son. Being how you are brings a lot of challenges, and you are of the age where you are changing, Hisashi said. Izuku groaned. Now calm down, son. Just relax, Hisashi said with both hands out. That means you are interested in girls. You want to kiss and fool around some. It is natural. But with your size, you are worried about how could a normal girl like you. Am I right? Izuku nodded. Well, son, people are attracted to all sorts of things, he chuckled. I remember this girl in college, smoking hot thing that. Hisashi coughed, seeing his son's eyes wide. I will tell you when you are older. So you like 𝗬𝗧𝗍 because she is similar to you and Reiko and has been there from the beginning. And now this new girl blows in like a hurricane and declares her love. That about sums it up, Izuku said with a laugh. This new girl is cute, you say, Izuku nodded. I say you get to know her better. If the only reason you like 𝗬𝗧𝗍 is her size and Reiko because she has been there from the beginning, then that doesn't seem right. When this? Yui, Izuku said. When this Yui said all those things, did it make you feel anything? Hisashi asked. It made my stomach flutter, Izuku said. That is a good sign, son, Hisashi said. Just don't rush things. You are a good-looking young man with 2 sisters who love you very much, a wonderful mother, and an okay dad. Izuku smiled. You are a lot better than okay. Thanks, son. Go work on your homework. I will call you when dinner is done, Hisashi said as Izuku ran to his room. Once he was gone, Hisashi pulled his hand from the glove and shook his hand. Oh, he muttered. Nemi. Izuku spent the rest of the night texting Yui. The group chat was very quiet until he heard his door open and saw Nemi come running in and jump at him. He laughed and caught her. Hey, Nemi, he said, hugging her quasi-tightly. Oh, I needed that, Nemi said. My Izuku gauge was almost on 0. Namiri looked at him. What is wrong? Izuku sighed and set her down. He recapped his day but failed to see Namiri's eye twitch. Okay, it sounds like you need hot chocolate and snuggles, Namiri declared. I am going to go clean up. You get our blankets, and I will make the hot chocolate when I get out, and we can watch something. Okay, Izuku said, scrambling. Are you going to blowtorch the marshmallow? He said, stopping at the door. For my Izuku, of course, Namiri replied as he ran off. Namiri walked to her room and pulled out her phone, texting 𝐭𝐻. Code Hussy. Despite 𝐭𝐻's very sound reasoning, Mike and Oboro would not let her leave until her patrol was complete in 3 hours. Izuku and Namiri were cuddled on the couch as he happily drank the best hot chocolate in the world. He was a bit sad that he didn't have any of the world's best brownies. Maybe 𝐭𝐻 would make him some if he asked. After the hot chocolate, Nemi returned and laid his head in her lap. Do you want to talk about it? Nemi said that as the next episode of Heart of the Galaxy began, they watched the early seasons in preparation for the new season. Nemi, do you have a boyfriend? Izuku asked. If I did, would you be jealous? Nemi teased, running her hand through his hair. A little bit. But it would be because we might not get to do stuff like this anymore, Izuku said, not seeing his sister's smile. No, I do not have a boyfriend, Nemi said gently. Some first dates but no second ones. They just weren't for me. Do you ever get scared about being alone? Izuku replied. No, I wonder if I will ever meet the right one, but I know I will have you, 𝐭𝐻, and the boys for the rest of my life, so I will never be alone, Nemi said. Are you scared about being alone? Sometimes, Izuku said. I told you and 𝐭𝐻 about my dream, but I wonder if, he blushed and sputtered, if you will ever be able to experience the physical side of a relationship, Nemi said teasingly. She could tell by how his body tensed that he was blushing. We told you that is normal, 𝐬𝐻. And what did we tell you? When I find the right girl, take it slow, work with what she can handle, and if she loves me, we will find a way to make it work, he stammered. Izuku, you are a tall, strong, buff young man, Namiri said. Yes, you are larger than many people, but you are not 15 feet tall or as big as Godzilla, and he has 3 wives. I think you will find someone one day worthy of you, and you will experience everything you dream of. Now, are you still having trouble sleeping? Do you want me to tuck you in tonight? Unless I work out a lot or spend a bunch of energy, I have a hard time falling asleep, Izuku responded. It has been a few days, so if you would? Of course, Nemi said. So this Yui Kota, you wouldn't have happened to have gotten her birth date and citizen identification number, would you? No, why would I have gotten all that? Izuku said, confused. No reason, just wondering, Nemi said, continuing to run her hand through his hair. They just sat there for a bit till the episode ended. She patted his shoulder and sat up. They folded the blanket and walked him to his room. She made a show of turning her back so she could change into a pair of pajama pants before hearing him climbing into bed. Thank you, Nemi, Izuku said, smiling up at her as she sat beside him. She ran her hand through his hair and smiled warmly. I love you. I love you too, Namiri whispered. She leaned down and kissed his forehead. Now dream good dreams. Tomorrow is another day. Slowly, she released her quirk. She saw him take a deep breath of the gas and smile as his eyes closed. She sat there watching him sleep for a few moments. It was one of the things she loved. He looked so peaceful. She could still see the young, freckled boy on her lap that day at UA. Nemi was in the office working on paperwork when 𝐭𝐻 entered and asked, did he get her birth date and cyan? Sadly, no, Namiri said, but something about her name sounded familiar, like I had heard it before. Well, what was her name? 𝐭𝐻 asked. Yui Kota. 𝐭𝐻 sat back and thought, black hair, bright blue eyes? Namiri nodded. That can't be right. I hope I am wrong, but the odds of there being two of them who look the same are very low. Are you going to tell me what is going on, or do I have to gas you and hang you upside down naked again? 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝐻 said, sounding annoyed. Kana raised her eyebrow and smirked. Yui Kota is the name of the granddaughter of General Thunderbolt. When I was at the HSPC, we had a file on him that I read while in charge of Izuku's protection. Oh, he won't like that one bit. 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝐻 smirked. Any news on the general? Word is that he and the HSPC have been having a silent fight. Kana ran her hand through her hair. Each side doesn't trust the other, so they are moving through proxies. The general has something he has been cooking up for years now. Some new weapon for the defense force. Any ideas on what it is? 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝐻 said, signing her report form. No, Kana said. That is what the HSPC is worried about. Word has it that it is some biological counter-weapon and that testing of it, some of the top brass from the JDF used the words game changer and balance shifter, but I heard that the ethics and ramifications have been called into question. That sounds like a whole pot of bad, 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝐻 said. Do you think that Thunderbolt sent his granddaughter after Izuku? Trying to lure him to the military or into something? I don't think he would, but we need to keep our eyes open. How is our boy? Kana said, looking at the picture on the desk of the three of them at the beach. Kana and 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝗄 in their bikinis sitting on Izuku's biceps as they all had the double bicep pose going. She made his tummy flutter, 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝗄 managed to say. Can you believe that 𝗧𝗵𝗲 just comes up and spouts all that stuff at him? The nerve of that girl. Trying to steal our Izuku, Kana added. 𝗧𝗪𝗀𝗏. Reiko was in a daze and upset. She let it out once they got where Izuku wasn't around. Izuku Midoriya was her longest friend and best friend. She protected him that day on the mountain and has felt this strong connection to him ever since. When the Hulk emerged for the second time, it was to protect her, and she never forgot that. That day when the Hulk was holding her, it was a bit scary, but when she looked into his eyes, she saw Izuku. And he was scared. She talked to Izuku, not the Hulk, and he changed back. Over the years, it was hard not to be able to see him or play with him as much. After the HSPC took him, their meetings had to be even more controlled, but every time she would be driving to the facility, her heart would start to race, and she was so excited. Then, the second their eyes met, or she heard his voice, it was like an explosion of happiness. And when they parted, she was sad for days. They had just grown closer and closer. She was a bit sad to see the boy she cared so much about disappear, and the new Izuku came forward. His size was intimidating, but those were the same eyes, which made it perfect. Her mother would say words like a crush, but Reiko didn't understand them then. However, she began to understand it more when every time they talked or met, her heart would thump so hard against her chest that she thought it might break free. She loved how, despite his immense size, strength, and toughness, he would hold her in front of him when something scary came on so she could protect him. But when a real person was the threat, he would be her shield, ready to fight to protect her. The feel of his arms or the growl that sometimes escaped his lips was thrilling. Then he came to take her to the dance, and she didn't feel weird. She felt beautiful. He even enjoyed her dancing. When it came time to slow dance, her feet never touched the ground as he held her. The pool parties, the beach trips, and even the camping trip were all she wanted because he was there. She felt better after talking with Mina and Josie, knowing they didn't feel the same way. She didn't have competition, so she could figure out if he had feelings for her. Then Yui Kota came in. So I wanted to grab Kota with her quirk and throw her out the window. But Kota saw him and saw beauty, just like Reiko did. She didn't see a monster, a freak, or anything else. She heard him and Josie be called. She saw him and was in love. Well, lust, according to her friend and mother. Reiko was sitting in her room, wondering what to do. She knew one thing for sure. She was not about to surrender Izuku to Yui Kota or his scary sisters. If Yui Kota wanted to fight, then she would get a war. Reiko came into class and saw Izuku sitting in his seat with Josie next to him, along with Mina. Kota was also there. Reiko marched up to Izuku and set a bag on his desk. She carefully pulled out 2 smaller boxes and handed them to Mina and Josie, whose eyes lit up. 2 large cinnamon rolls from 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏 with extra frosting. She turned, smiled at Izuku, and pulled out a 4-pack of caramel pecan rolls with additional frosting. Reiko, Thank you so much, Izuku gushed. You are welcome, Izuku, Reiko answered. But I must confess that I have an ulterior motive in presenting these to you. Reiko took a deep breath and placed her hand over her heart. Izuku Midoriya, I am in love with you. The entire class went silent and stared. I have been in love with you since before I knew what love was. I was afraid to tell you as I did not know how you felt, and I took the selfish route of thinking I had time. When Kota declared I was at a loss, I was no longer lost. I understand you have given her your word to get to know her better. I am confident that even after you do, you will choose me. No one will understand all you have gone through better than I. I have been here for it all and will be by your side for all that will come. You are beyond handsome. You are incredible. Reiko floated herself up and kissed his cheek. You are my best friend, the one who captivates my thoughts and the one I love. Reiko floated back down, and she turned to Kota. I will not surrender him to you or anyone else, Yui Kota. Reiko looked back at the class, smiled, and took her seat. Holy hell, Mina whispered. Josie was too flustered to say anything. She can say all the pretty words she wants, Yui told Izuku. I didn't need time to figure it out. I love you. She will have no choice but to surrender. I won't lose. Yui walked back to her seat as the bell rang. What just happened? Izuku thought, a sentiment echoed by the rest of the class.